Hello, welcome back to Pilgrims of Plunder podcast, where my friend Greg and myself discuss whatever topics on our mind. Today, we're going to do the very first subject we ever debated about many years ago, and that is, should Christians, individual Christians, be active in politics? So we're not going to be talking about the organized church. That's for a whole nother subject, and we'll probably do a video on that. But should individual Christians be active? Way back in the day when we first met, I argued, yes, they should. And my friend Greg said, no. And we've kind of flipped sides throughout the years and gone back to different sides. And well, it's been interesting. Do you have any general thoughts before we dive in, Greg?
I'm still not sure where I stand on it.
I think I'm back to where I originally was.
For as much as I try to have, a dedicated, zealous position on all topics, it's a weird one for me. It is. So, and I'm all for the discussion, the renewal of the discussion, because I don't know. I don't know where I'm open to being convinced one way or the other.
All right. Well, here's where I come down. And I think it's been hopefully modified and improved throughout the years through our discussion, and also dealing with the whole issue about Christian nationalism. But again, that's a whole other video.
Mm-hmm.
I think the quick answer is, should Christians be active in politics? The answer is yes, with a large footnote. I do think that for two reasons they should, biblical reasons. One, loving your neighbor. I think when Christians are active in the public square, in the political arena, they bring blessing because they're going to understand things better than the non-Christian, hopefully, at least obviously in moral things. And so when they vote on moral issues, they're doing good things. Like Christians go out and vote pro-life. Christians go out and vote to defense of the marriage. And that's a blessing. That's bringing a blessing on society. My other argument is from Romans 13, and that is we're called to honor the king. Now, I'm going to define the king for the United States as the U.S. Constitution, but it also can generally comply with the magistrates. When we honor the king, we do what they request, and especially if it's a good request. And to be active in the political system is in a way of honoring our heritage, honoring our Constitution, honoring our magistrates. And I think those are godly things. I don't think it's an issue of church discipline. If you don't vote, if you decide not to vote, I don't think it's an issue where the church comes for you and puts you under the ban, because I don't know where in scripture where it commands it. But I think it's an appropriate thing. And so those are my two basic arguments why Christians should be active in politics. Your thoughts?
All right, let's see. So we have moral and we have moral and we have civil, which sounds very familiar in other contexts. So yes. A moral, and I'll try to refrain from using such terms as obligation, because to start with your concluding point, it isn't a matter of church discipline. I agree with you on that. So wherever you come down politically or civilly, to say that the church should discipline its congregants for their participation or lack thereof within the civil realm, politically,
yep.
Is biblically indefensible. I will agree with that. I mean, you'd have to jump through some hoops.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you try to take it down the, is it moral for Christians to promote Christian morality? Yes. Can you infer then that it would be immoral to not promote Christian morality? Maybe. Is that a matter of church discipline? I think you're getting into some pretty interesting
in the narrow sense of church discipline, in the sense of being overtly corrected by the congregation. In the broad sense, like when we first started, it's like, hey man, you should be active in politics, but you have some freedom.
Right.
I mean, that is in the broad sense church discipline. So just
yes. So let's see. So the two arguments, right? So being moral, I don't disagree with the first point. I don't think. It is, I agree with the fact that yes, to promote morality in any facet is a good thing to do. So if you're going to go out and you're going to vote in favor of a representative who's going to adhere to, Christian morals, good if you're going to vote for, if you happen to be in an area where you actually vote on particular, I was going to say ordinances. That's not the word. Laws and the such. Then yes, voting, that is a good thing to do. The counter, of course, the consideration is if you don't engage in those things, is that not good? Is that ungood? Is that bad? Not to go as far as to say, is it sin? But if it is good to promote good things, doesn't that mean that it would be bad to not?
Again, is it the Mary Martha thing?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, because there's definitely sin, which overt breaking of God's law, which the church should directly discipline its members on. But then there's, is that a wise decision? And the church might come gently and give in the broad sense discipline, just say, hey, have you thought about it? Is that an appropriate thing to do? But it doesn't bring the narrow sense to discipline. I mean, you may be unwise, but unwise is not a sin in the sense that, again, that brings the rod, to use the Old Testament metaphor.
Right.
Right.
I wish I had memorized. Vaguely remembering because the Westminster Confession has a chapter on good works, and their definition of good works, are those the things which are commanded or derived from the commandments of God. And so to not vote is not an evil work. Again, not saying that we shouldn't vote, shouldn't be active in politics, but I guess just approaching it from if you have a conviction to not, do you sin? And I think that the consensus is no, you don't sin if you are not politically active. I don't know, maybe you do. Given again, if you are in a country that has a democratic process, because that's the other thing, which sort of leads into your second point, that the honoring of the civil magistrate. If you are a Christian that lives in a monarchy, let's say if a pure, like an actual monarchy existed, you have no democratic process, you have no representation, it's not a republic, it's not a democracy, you have no say. You would not be, I guess this conversation would have nothing, you'd have nothing to do with this topic at all.
Well, you still should be a good citizen.
You should still be a good citizen, but voting no longer applies.
Oh, sure.
No, which is my point. I mean, it's not like, oh, hey.
But is that person still going to be active in the political realm? Fine, they're not in a democracy, they're not in a republic. But when I don't know, when the magistrate says, please show up for public execution because we want to, we want you to have fair justice, is the appropriate thing to show up.
Yeah. Right. And yes, and on the second point, I think I'm less committed than you on that one. I see your argument, voting as a matter of honoring the magistrate. I know that I historically, and I think I still do, kind of take the more hard line on that, which is if it were commanded, if it were an obligation to vote, then we ought to vote. We ought to be engaged in local and state or federal level politics as participating, whatever it would be. Since it is optional, I would not say that it is dishonoring not to be engaged in the political realm. So if a Christian does not vote because it is not a mandate given by the magistrate, I would not say, or I would say you are not dishonoring our political system by not voting, which I know seems very un-American.
If the magistrate desires you to vote but doesn't compel you by law, Does that not fall under the concept from First Peter? I misquoted, not Romans. First Peter 2:17, to honor the king.
If he desires you to.
So if
Well,
you decide, no, it's an optional thing.
it is optional.
If it's one, okay, the
To oblige voting is fundamentally against the whole concept of American liberty. You have the liberty by our magistrate, and
Sure.
I also
Sure.
want to, at some point in this conversation, I want to push back a bit on the magistrate. The closest that you can for America would be the Constitution. I don't disagree with that, but that's also problematic. Because our system is one where you have the liberty to participate. You equally have the liberty to not. And so it's one of those, to be harsh, you have the freedom to sell yourself into slavery. You have the right to give up your rights. And I don't believe that to be dishonoring. If you want to willfully not participate, I don't think that is an offense to our political system.
See, again, this is the point we disagree with,
right.
I guess. And again, I don't want to push it too far that you have to go vote. That's not an issue of church system. I can't think of how that could be directly found in a clear commandment.
Right.
But I do believe the honoring the king argument is a good argument, because because of our system is based up, on a voting system, that it is part of our heritage. It is part of our Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's not a crime not to vote, but it's superior to vote. You do a good thing when you vote as a citizen. An active citizen is a better citizen than a non-active citizen. You are being much more, at the very least, Mary than Martha, let alone if you're a Christian. And again, but that's my first argument. And so why not? If the system wants you to vote, if the system encourages you to vote, if the king wants you to vote, doesn't compel you, but wants you, shouldn't you do that?
Again, the word should is a term of obligation. Should and shouldn't, I think are far more, I don't know. Shouldn't you? I don't know.
Why not?
I don't know. Right.
Why?
So
why
I
not?
do vote.
Because
on that. So like quick thing, for background and context. I do vote. I vote in local and I vote in national. I have no problem personally.
But you didn't when we first met, correct?
Well, a lot of my reason for not voting. So there was a lot of it which was laziness. I didn't care. There was a lot of it which was apathy. I didn't care. Now, granted, my apathy still exists because to get political, when you have two parties which are destroying things only differently at the rate at which they destroy things, voting is kind of which is a totally which is non-religious reasons, more so we'll say utilitarian reasons there's no point.
I'm having a flashback here. I do think there's a difference between, I don't care, I'm not going to pay attention to the civil politics.
No.
I'm going to be lazy too.
Yes. Not voting as a matter of conscience.
Yeah.
No. I'm getting to that. A lot of it wasn't a matter of conscience. It was just a matter of, it doesn't matter. And I know it was also very different, or it was somewhat different on the local and national. When you are of a political party, which is the minority of a state, there's less reason to vote. It's one of those, if every Republican in Connecticut got out and voted Republican, there still wouldn't be enough Republicans to flip Connecticut red. So we'll say like in a primary or a presidential. So things like that. So I'm like, well, then really what's the point? Now, that's one way of thinking. I honestly, I don't approve of that. mentality. That is
Yeah.
the mentality that I had. I
Yep.
think that is a very foolish mentality to have, but
Mhm.
that's where I was. It was
Yep.
the,
Yep.
oh well, whatever. Um, if we are talking as a matter of moral conviction, personal, personal conviction or obligation, um, it is better to willfully not vote for moral reasons, saying if my vote is my expression of agreement and I disagree with everyone, I vote for no one. So if that's your stance, that why would I want to promote even the lesser of two evils? If that is your conclusion, I have no problem with not voting as a matter of
But
of
that's being active in
oh
this.
no no no,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
um which is superior to
Yeah.
the nihilist
Yeah. Yeah.
approach,
Yeah. Right.
which I held to. um uh and then there is still that matter of, if you are going to vote, you should probably know who you're voting for and
Which
why.
requires time, effort, and work.
Right, don't just vote because that guy has an R or that guy has a D, because there's also problems with that. There are a lot of problems with that. um all that rambliness aside, um going back to, as a Christian, is it better to vote than not, or is it better to be active? Now, and I gotta kind of go to that, because if your conclusion if your conclusion is to disengage as a matter of religious conviction, if
Well,
that
Amish.
qualifies as political activism, to
Yes.
use that term in this context, um then sure. If the concern is apathy and indifference in one camp, which manifests as non-engagement,
Yeah.
or the we'll say the Christian response, which is either uh which is politically active, which would manifest as either voting or not voting. So it may appear the outcome may be in the apathy camp, but you're not doing it for apathetic reasons. But if that's still active, but it manifests as a vote of silence, if you will, an act of nothing, um, then logically, I guess I would also agree with you, which would then conclude whether or not you vote, as a Christian, you ought to be politically active as a matter of what then? Knowledge, understanding, being up to date on things,
As a good citizen.
as a good citizen.
As a good citizen, because it's not just voting.
Yeah,
Obviously,
yes, I know. I'm going into a very I'm
yeah, no, no,
using a
no,
very
and
narrow thing.
and
No,
there's
no,
a
you're
place
right.
for
You're
that,
right.
because I mean that's where the original conversation started from.
Yes.
But it's to be a good citizen. Like, when you get a jury duty, I think everyone's first reaction is, "Ugh, I don't want to do this. Can I get out of this? Hey, I'm a
I've
pastor. Can I get out of this?"
right.
Yeah, I
I've been
mean,
selected, but they never
I
actually picked me. So I've
yeah.
had summons.
Well, this day and age, especially if you're in a blue state, just say you're a fundamentalist Christian for
Right.
jury
They'll
selection.
pass over
No,
real
absolutely.
fast.
So yeah, but regarding that, yeah, the response is no, no, no. This is something, this is something the king, the Constitution,
Mhm.
says it's very important in our society, that we have this beautiful right of trial by your peers,
Right.
and therefore you should show up. And again, as a Christian who hopefully knows the law of God somewhat well, you're going to be a blessing, because you're going to be salt and light. And so I think Christians, again, should be active in the civil realm. Again, but we have to be careful, because, let's say, preaching on this, I've occasionally preached on this, saying, yes, you should be good citizens, but unless the church get into a political agenda, and that's a whole another video, because I strongly believe the organized church should be apolitical. And like, I once did a sermon briefly on a section of it, how should you vote? And I said, don't worry, I'm not going to tell you what candidates to vote for, but do you take the law of God and then think it out? Which candidate, which political party is best at least not attacking the basics of the Ten Commandments.
Right.
And maybe go that direction. But even if it's like, I lived in Missouri for 7 years, and it was rural Missouri, and I'm a conservative Republican, and I had a laugh because usually in Connecticut, it's, as you know, your choice between two horrible choices.
Mm-hmm.
In Missouri, I had a laugh. Like they actually had to shut down my local voting booth because they couldn't find a Democrat to man it. And whoever won the Republican primary was going to be the candidate. And it was choice between two very conservative Republicans. And I'm like, I don't know how to vote.
Right.
I mean, it's like, these are two really good candidates. I'm like, one guy, one guy has a dog. I'll vote for him. I mean, you got that kind of stupid.
There you go. Being a good citizen.
but and it was tempted not to vote.
Right.
But no, but again, my argument still generally applies. It's more of a, to be a good citizen. And again, my two arguments, it's honoring the king to be a good citizen, and you're loving your neighbor. You're being salt and light. I mean, again, not something that's demanded by the church. And if you want to stay away from politics, I mean, give an example. If someone is just like, they get crazy about politics, it becomes so consuming. They get nuts about it.
Right.
I could see a pastor saying to that person, it's like, you know what, you need to throttle it back. Maybe still vote, but you're heading towards an idol. Because politics can very much be an idol, but I think it is honoring the king, and I think it's loving your neighbor, and therefore it is a good thing. It is a good merry thing.
Yeah. I don't know. No, I mean, this is a really interesting topic for me, because it's one of those few things that for some reason I don't want to go.
It's a generational thing. It's a it is very much.
And I don't know why. Maybe because I'm young.
Yeah, maybe because it's a generational thing.
Right. Maybe right. It's like
I'm weird because I was born in the mid '60s. But I had older parents. My father fought in World War II.
Right.
And so I inherited, for good and for ill, that America.
Right.
And America is a Christian nation, and you go and you are active. To be a good citizen is to be a good American. And and I think there's some truth to that. And I see a much more cynical, and sometimes justifiably so. I mean, of the younger generation there. I mean, because voting rights have, voting percentages have decreased over time.
Mm-hmm.
There's a higher cynicism, and again, sometimes rightfully so. But there is definitely a much more individualistic, less communal focus on our culture. I mean, you see this like with joining organizations. All organizations, including the church, dramatically decrease because it's very individualistic.
Right.
I'll go and take karate lessons because I want to learn karate. I won't go join a civic organization because why?
Right. No, and it sucks. It sucks that that's probably the reason, because that's one of those weird things of, how do you... It's weird to me because if it's what you've always known, then you don't know differently to want to change that.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, I've experienced something different and it was good, and now I want to do my part to get that back or to maintain that. When you grow up in an individual, cynical world, there's nothing to get back. Like I can't look back and go, oh, there was a time of unity and a time of peace, and all of this. And I'm like, I don't know. I've also, personality, I think, rolls into that. Like I'm fine with just being alone in my own little nerdy world.
Yeah.
And even being a vet, right?
Yeah.
Even having been in the military. And you and I have had these conversations, and I always find it, I find it somewhat comical, though, that when I talk about the military, it's very cynical.
Yeah.
And your counter is, it wasn't always that way.
Yeah.
And I kind of laugh, and I'm like, well, it was for me. But I mean, like, you even saw that when you were in, because you have the older generation, you know, the guys who are like approaching retirement,
Yeah.
and they're military. I mean, and I was on
Yeah.
submarines, which
Yeah.
as a submariner, it's college campus underwater is really what it is. Although probably not anymore. Although actually, no, maybe it very well may be, because it's also gone the way of awful liberalism.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, there's a lot of discontent when
Yeah.
you're in there, and among, you know, my peers at that time. But the older sailors, those were your salty sailors. I mean, they were people who were in the military, whereas the rest of us,
Yeah.
it was just something that we did because we didn't want to go to college. You know, and it's really difficult to, you know, so then again, like, to be active, because I don't disagree with you, but I but I don't agree with you. I don't disagree with you because you're
Well,
right. You are right intellectually. I have an intellectual agreement with everything that you've said. There's no heart in my agreement with the
hmm.
things that you said.
Oh,
Um
no,
which is just really, so it makes it very difficult for me to go, you know what, you're right.
and,
Let me amend my life. I look at it and go, yeah, that makes sense. That's nice.
and and I somewhat agree because as someone, you know, I am much less patriotic than I used to be. If we're gonna
Right.
get political here, but it's our podcast, we can say anything.
Hey,
I
we can
mean,
do whatever we want.
I mean, I seriously during the Obama administration contemplated stop saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
Right.
Like,
Yeah,
should I?
you and I had a discussion on
Yeah,
that. I had
I mean, should
similar
I
issues.
mean, I am at that level of like, I am
Mhm.
so, I have so, no, don't know what word I'm looking for. I have no respect for the nation.
Right.
I mean, my nation is evil. I mean, when Russia makes more moral statements sometimes than the United States, and I'm like,
No,
what's
right?
going on here?
Talk
And
about shame.
I know what crazy clown world are we living in?
Mhm.
And the current administration, what's been going on even the last week during this crazy month of June.
Yep.
I mean, I get it, and you know, it's funny. You often the whole political thing. I've heard some younger Christian nationalists, and
Mhm.
they argue you old people, you don't realize how bad it's gotten. You're still back in like Captain America 1950s,
Right.
and you know, some more cynicism should be appropriate. Um, again, my argument is citizenship, I guess, in the broad sense. And, you know, yes, there's a danger to overt patriotism. Yes, there's a danger to making the state an idol. Absolutely.
Right.
But I think under the argument of honor the king and love your neighbor, we are called to be good citizens. And so I think in the first century, I mean, when you read the New Testament is an extraordinary apolitical. How you have a
Mhm.
centurion and a zealot in the same organization is beyond me.
Right.
I mean that's like having a Waffen SS guy and a Jewish freedom fighter in the same religious organization. I mean,
Right.
which shows you how what's truly important. But
Yes, agree.
should they both go and be good citizens? Now we have to define what that is.
Right.
But I I I honor the king,
Right.
respect the magistrate. And be salt and light. I think those are clearly New Testament things.
Right.
So again, how that works out, we can debate. I think the cynicism, and I get it because I live in Connecticut. It's like, does my vote even matter? I still show up and I vote, and you know, it's like, ugh. But I try to be a good citizen. Now, and again, I'm not that uber active. I don't go to town meetings. Could I be more active? Sure. But
Mhm.
that again, I'm repeating myself, but that notion of citizenship, I do think is in the penumbras, the shadows
Right.
of the New Testament.
You made a couple points, and I want to highlight one and then discuss the other.
Yeah,
And I think because you brought up that matter of the Pledge of Allegiance, and I remember that you and I had conversations at length on that because I was
yeah,
working at a school at the time.
yeah,
I was staff. And they still did the pledge every day.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a period where I'm like, no, you know what? I'm not going to stand for it. I'm like, I have, and my reasoning was, it was disagreement with.
Yeah.
And I remember your point, which was phenomenal. Respect is
Yeah.
not agreement.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
I still do the Pledge of Allegiance. Yeah.
Right. So right. And that really was it for me. I was hung up on this individualism, like hyper individualism, stupidity. That respect is somehow agreement, and that showing honor, giving honor unto whom honor is due, means that you agree, and that's absolutely wrong. That's false. It is not a matter of agreement. You never have to agree with those in authority. You do have to honor and respect all authority, because all authority is appointed by God. And so custom unto whom custom is another one. And so that makes it very regional as well, because a custom is a regional practice. The modern term is culture, which I love that you pointed out. Culture is not in scripture. Custom is in scripture. Culture is a modern concept. But using the biblical concept, you have custom, and it is customary to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance as a United States citizen. And so custom unto whom custom is due. You don't have to agree, which also means, and speaking from a just quick side tangent and then back to the main point, in the military, you are obligated, you are ordered to, you salute foreign nationals. So a foreign national, high-ranking civilian or military of any other nation, you salute as a matter of honor, as a matter of respect. You don't have to agree with them. It could be Russia. The president of Russia could show up and you still stand for the president of Russia because he is a dignitary. We have in our own country the military that doesn't even stand as a matter of respect for our own president. And I remember that happened with the Marines with Obama. And that was so upsetting to me. I'm not even a Marine. And I just thought, I'm like, you horrible people. The office of presidency is before you. You stand up. But anyway, so there was that. So yes, and even tying that into the point of this civil activity, political activity, voting, in a very narrow sense. If that is a matter of custom and of honoring, and I think I'm going to go more on the custom sake, because my counter to, is it honoring to the king, the United States king, to vote? And I'm like, I don't know. I found sort of ways around that, at least not how I understood it. But and no, I'm not saying that works. It worked for me. It's good enough for me. It's my truth, Doug.
There we are.
However, the custom, it is customary for U.S. citizens to vote. I am fine with that argument. And in fact, for me, yes, that convinces me as a matter of custom. I will be all on board with that. Now, going on to the other thing real quick, it doesn't matter if it matters. It doesn't matter if your vote matters.
Right, exactly.
Right. And it doesn't matter if you agree necessarily. Now, again, in the strict, if you have a very sincere moral conviction that there is no one you can vote for whom you can vote, okay, then
that's
go
a
with
thought
God
out biblical position that, at least also by our culture, is allowed by custom.
Right. So customary to not vote as a matter of political protest, if you will, to do that. I wanted to, oh no, give me 2 seconds. I ranted so much that I forgot.
You actually had a question.
I know. And it was a good one too. You brought up, and then this is the thing that I kind of want to get into, and it's how much of a purist can we get on this? If we agree, yes, either honoring, or either by honor or by custom, Christians it is wise for Christians to do these things and to be these things. And in
Yeah.
fact, if we're actually going to that scripture and saying custom unto whom custom and honor, fear the king, then you may be able to even make a little bit more of a moral argument, where not doing these things might be not just unwise, but might be kind of bad. But that can be another thing. That's another thing. How much is enough?
Well, and of course, Scripture doesn't tell us,
Right.
and I think and that allows some freedom.
Right.
I mean, I'm probably more active than you, but I'm not very active.
Right.
And so, are there people in the church who are better citizens than I am? Sure.
Okay.
I think though, I mean, by the king's perspective, this earthly city's perspective, I am by definition a good citizen. I
Right.
think I don't break the laws. I try to be good to my neighbor. Except for a speeding ticket, a couple decades ago, I've not run afoul of the law.
I've done far worse in my days. So
So
good on you.
I show up to vote. Now,
Yep.
could I do more? Sure. But I think from the king, and I mean the earthly king's perspective, they said,
Right.
okay, no, you're a good citizen.
Right.
So,
Right. And
again, it's one of those things. I think, the Lord only gives us so much time to work on things.
Yep.
So
And
there may
only
be,
so much passion for
yeah,
particular.
exactly. Oh,
Yep.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So there may be something else I'm working on that's more important, but
Right.
I'm still trying to, use Romans 13:7. I'll go. Okay, I'll go. I'll go with the custom to custom, fear to fear,
Yep.
honor to honor.
Right.
I think I can honestly say I'm doing okay,
Right.
and I think the state would say I'm doing okay,
Right.
and therefore, okay.
Yeah.
Now, if I feel a movement of the spirit to be convicted, no, I need to do more.
Right.
That's fine,
But that would be personal, though.
yeah. Like
Right.
for instance,
Yeah.
I seriously told a couple of years ago running for school board.
Right.
Because we need someone to be crazy and stand up and say, no, homosexuality is an abomination.
Right.
And I don't think I need to get elected or whatever, but at least to have someone. And I might have just banned this video from YouTube.
I know. I just laughed. I'm like, well, there goes this episode, everyone.
Yeah. So
that's all right. We have it on. We're putting them up on Rumble too.
Okay, there we go. So we'll see.
Yeah.
But I decided as a pastor, I shouldn't do that, because that is going to be a distraction. That's going to be an idol. And that's when I was working through at the beginning of COVID, the whole Christian nationalism, post-millennialism, theonomy stuff. And we'll do a whole video on that. It's probably a couple of videos.
Yep.
And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I was convicted not to. It wouldn't be a sin if I did, but I don't think I'm sinning by not. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but it's not. It's not a wonderful white or black thing.
No,
it's that Proverbs thing,
right?
Where the tangenting here for a second, it was a major revelation for me to realize that I always wondered in Proverbs, why are they just like these random list of things? Why isn't it a systematic, clear, black and white structural thing that can help us understand how to best save money, how to best educate our children? And I realized that was intentional.
Right.
They're general statements that have general application, but once you try to have some systematic thing, you're going beyond Scripture, because there is a freedom in the Spirit.
Yep. So. Yep. No, and my question, I asked the question, I think, because it needed to be asked. Also, but as soon as you began answering it, it made me sort of remember and realize it's like all other matters of Christian liberty.
Yeah.
In the fact that we are different members of the same body. We have different strengths, we have different priorities, we have different passions. To say that, oh, you're not politically active enough as a matter of conviction is as foolish as saying you're not doing enough in the realm of, nuclear physics. It's like, could I be learning more about nuclear physics? I sure could.
Or investing in the stock market so you can have more money for your children.
There are tons of things I could be doing. I'm like, but I have no desire, no gift, no ability, really no concern. And so, it's one of those, it's that difference between we are all called to be witnesses. We are not all called to be evangelists.
Yeah.
And so there is a baseline of being salt and light in this world as Christians,
Yep.
which is different, which is sort of a universal obligation.
Yep.
But that's very different than everybody go be trained and educated and go forth, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. You know, it's like not everybody is an evangelist, not everybody's a pastor.
And that's a hugely important thing for people to remember in the church.
Right.
That your even most moral political crusade doesn't mean the church or other parishioners have to go along with it. Like,
right.
I mean, like your wife, very active in, politically active in dealing with, forced vaccination.
Right.
And awesome. That's salt and light. Go out there and do that. Hey, again, this video is definitely not going to last on YouTube.
No, you can speak against the vaccines now.
Okay, that's good. But
they've declassified that one.
But
we've always been at war with Eurasia.
And she didn't do this. But it would be wrong for her to be mad with the pastor if he was like, "You need to start preaching against this." I'm like, "No, I don't." Right. Or other Christians to church like, "Yeah, I don't really care about that."
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
And so there is that freedom, lest there be idols in the church. And so I think, so we'll use you as a case study.
Sure.
You were very cynical about politics. And I think was it appropriate to have the church come along and say, well, maybe you want to reconsider that.
Right.
And now, I mean, you vote. I think you wouldn't totally flake on jury duty.
No, I never had a problem with jury duty.
Exactly.
That's because that's not political. It was the weird political thing about voting.
And I get it. And politics is horrible. It's painful. But I think so. I think that was a appropriate. To use the broad sense, discipline. And again, discipline has many. The broad sense of church discipline is just training. Right. And when you go to Bible study, that's discipline. Yep. Having just a conversation with a friend, even if it's just supporting, that's actually discipline. It's like you're training for the Olympics. There is the narrow sense of where the teacher comes and beats you for making a mistake. Right. There's that.
Yep.
Or in the case of the church, it's excommunication.
Yeah.
You brought formal charges before the body. But are we actually coming to an agreement here?
Yeah, because I'm good with the custom argument.
Okay.
And I think really it gets into that the hang up again is making temporal earthly politics out to actually matter. And it matters then to not do something. It matters then to do something instead of looking at it and going, no, scripture says, offer custom to whom custom is due.
Yeah.
Right. It's not an approval of that custom.
Yep.
It's not saying that it is somehow eternal. Right. Obedience unto the Lord is eternal. Yep. Customary proceedings of the United States of America are absolutely inconsequential because America didn't exist and it won't always exist.
True.
But as we are alive now, we ought to adhere to that which is customary.
Which has been ordained by God.
Which has been ordained by God. This is where God has placed us, and we are called to live in a certain way. Not because it preserves a particular way of life or because it reaches back into the 1950s and pulls it into modern day. No, don't approach it, which is my problem. Trying to approach it in a human temporal sense will then color and influence what I would approve of or disapprove of as far as behavior and engagement, instead of just looking at scripture and going, no, you're missing the point. Just custom unto whom custom is due. It doesn't matter if you disagree with it personally. You don't have to agree with that which is customary. You just have to do it because you do it unto the Lord.
Do you also agree with the loving? I totally agree with you. Do you also agree with the loving argument?
Oh yeah, I know. I didn't bring much on that. I didn't bring much on that because I think I'm more readily on board with that mentality. In general, again, removing that from political, saying I am loving in the fact that I obey the law, right?
Yeah.
That's my civil
Yeah.
involvement. I never wanted to tie that too tightly to I am loving unto my neighbor because I vote for,
Good things.
God honoring laws. However,
Yeah.
again, that's more of a personal thing, which I think I've now amended my life in the past 20 minutes. I'd be more okay with saying yes. It is
Yeah.
good. It is good to promote good laws, and it is loving. It is loving to uphold uh good things, whether or not they're codified in law. Right.
The
So
Lutherans are really good at describing loving your neighbor, because I don't know, we have this notion like, I don't know, modern evangelicalism, loving your neighbor is, it's a very narrow emotional thing, and there's obviously
right.
a place to go out and give your neighbor a hug or something like that, or
Maybe, but
yeah,
sure.
yeah. Oh, I'm a New Englander, so
I know.
yeah. But they
Maybe
have a
not
much
up
more
north.
expansive
Down here you
understanding,
could.
which I really like, and they have a very strong focus on loving your neighbor. It's like, cutting your lawn is loving your neighbor. Like, wait, what? Well,
Right.
if you're going to be that guy that, like, your house is dilapidated and you have the car up on, rusted cars up on the cinder blocks.
You might be in the South.
Yeah, you're someplace in Connecticut too.
You should see my neighborhood.
Oh yeah, you have a nice neighborhood. I've been there.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but that is actually loving your neighbor. I mean, it's
Right.
not an eyesore. You're not devaluating their property.
Right.
I mean, it's not the greatest thing in the world, I grant you. And you have some freedom how you cut your lawn.
Sure.
But you're doing that not just, it should be not out of pride. I want to have the best lawn, but
Right.
you're
Right.
doing it actually because it's the appropriate good neighbor thing to do.
Sure. Sure.
And it's not some epic work of, donating 90% of your money to, some great Christian evangelistic organization. There's a place for that. But it's such a mundane, ordinary thing, which I think is actually beautiful. And I think that's part of being, again, a good citizen, is to be a good neighbor, because we are neighbors with our citizens.
Right.
And I think that's helpful to view it that way. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to go vote today. There's no one to vote. I'm like, nope, I'm gonna love my neighbor.
Yep. I also love your analogy of being a neighbor with the upkeep of one's property, and tying it into my joke, but also sort of making it more of a serious point. Your example is a customary example, because up north, it is customary to maintain decent property value, if you will.
But not down south?
But down south, people don't care.
Really?
And so it would not be as loving to my neighbor to mow my lawn, because a lot of our neighbors mow their lawn once every month, couple months. There are people around on the block, they have, like 2-3 cars off on their yard, rusted out. And everyone's okay with it. Like, nobody looks out and goes, oh, they're dragging everything
There is
down.
that much difference between the north. I didn't know this.
Oh yeah.
I've only been down south once to visit you.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, you drive around, because we're in a very rural area.
Yeah, but it's not a poor area. I mean, you have a decent house in a nice neighborhood.
Oh no, this subdivision is very New England looking. They're all raised ranches. They have basements. No, leave this subdivision. It's double wides up on cinder blocks. And there are cars everywhere. Actually, even some of the houses around in it. And it was one of those things that actually took a little bit getting used to.
Is it because of lack of money or simply custom?
Both.
Because the lack of money is one thing,
right?
Custom is another.
I think it becomes customary because enough people are of the same socioeconomic,
Interesting.
And so it just becomes, yeah, of course you have, 3 pickup trucks, one of which only one works at any one time because you keep swapping parts out, and like nobody cares. That's totally normal down here. And so it is interesting. It's like, oh, mowing your lawn, and I drive around or walk around the subdivision, and I'm like, there are some people that have better lawns than I do, but they're right next to the guy who has, like a field for his yard, and nobody cares, because it's not, it doesn't mean anything, I guess, is sort of the point. Like, it doesn't, you wouldn't get away. I mean, the cops would get called on you up north if you let your yard go the way that some people do down here. But
right.
because down here, nobody likes the law, because the law is an imposition on our God-given freedoms.
Yeah.
Everyone just sort of says, as long as when you're shooting your gun in your backyard, your bullets don't hit your neighbor, that's loving. So,
Hence the AR-15 on your wall.
Right. No, exactly. Exactly. It's loving to own and regularly operate firearms in suburban neighborhoods. That way everyone knows this neighborhood's protected. So, but we won't get it.
No problem.
Side note, I fully disagree with the mentality that some hold to, that owning firearms is loving. But I'm like, no, I would never go that far. If you don't know how to use a gun,
but
don't buy one.
there are Christian nationalists. We're going to go to that argue that, so that that you could go and aid your neighbor if some bad guy's showing up.
Right. Aiding your neighbor, just call the cops. I mean, like, to say there is a moral obligation to grab a weapon and attempt to physically thwart a criminal. I will not go there because scripture doesn't go there.
But that's a whole nother video.
That is.
Yeah.
It's in fact, it is absolutely unloving if you own a gun and you cannot operate it properly.
Correctly.
You are now
your family, your children,
serious liability to everyone around you.
Yeah. No, I agree. So I didn't know that.
No, but that is it's customary. I mean, you can get away with. I mean, you can get away with a ton of stuff on your property down, because it's your property, and that's the thing. Up north, it's the community's property because you're all communists. Down here, it's your property because this is the South.
Hey, we won the war, remember? Anyways,
doesn't matter. Doesn't matter who won the war. You guys, y'all up there,
y'all. Does your son now have a Southern accent? Well,
yeah, I don't have a Southern accent. Yeah, I've been catching myself though. There are some words. No, there are some words that I've been catching myself. I've been trying to maintain discipline on speech.
Why not embrace?
Because I'm a linguist and the Southerners are wrong.
Okay. All right,
because I can't. No. It's just it's like, I correct my kids. Sarah will come out with these things that are just so redneck, and I'm like, no, absolutely not in this house. And there is some definite country that has started to creep its way into our speech, and I keep trying to roll it back. It's inevitable. It'll happen.
I had the exact opposite. To off on a tangent. When I did a semester at Oxford, for a while I was starting to get that beautiful English accent, and I still wanted to keep it, but it was so fake I couldn't do it.
Right. I don't know.
Pardon me, so it's just the Q. Oh, very good. Yes.
The Q. Yes, well, hey, Q makes more sense than a line. I gotta say, there are things that just make more sense functionally, as far as language. Except for boot.
Talking about I'm loving your neighbor. Towards the end, because I used to always walk around with an umbrella because I loved umbrellas, and just it was the English thing to do. I would have Americans ask me for directions. Nice. And I so wanted to see if I could fake an English accent.
Yep.
Mary, oh, how quaint. Yes. Yes. Of course. You're looking at I couldn't do it because I was lying. Right. And it was funny. It happened to me a couple of times. I start speaking in an American accent, and they just like walk away. I'm like, you don't know what I'm talking about.
It's like, nope. Not from around here.
Oh, man, I wanted to see how I could fake the Americans with my fake English accent.
I see, and it's one of those differences between the two of us. I would much rather develop a Cockney accent than a proper British accent. I love Cockney. Right. Mine, I don't know. Mine is a quote by Augustine.
Oh, I can't beat that.
Yeah. But I like Cockney. Cockney's great, and it's all mumbly, and they're like the letter T and R don't exist. It's great.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. We should do a whole show in accents. That'd be. You know,
Oh, I'm good. Yeah. Oh,
well,
we
I think we're at
talk
the
at
hour
length.
mark, and we're
We're
kind of
52 minutes ish.
Oh,
I mean,
52? Oh, okay. I'm
well,
sorry.
we can cut it. I mean,
I think we're now rambling about accents.
we're off. We're off
I
on language.
yeah, I
but
thought we would have a little bit more of a disagreement.
no,
I
well,
guess
we
the
did.
only thing the only
Yeah.
thing we actually really disagree on is a very technical concept of the word honor. I think it's
Yes,
honoring
that was
the
my
king
hang up.
to put a fine point on it. It
Yes,
is
let's. In
honoring the king
conclusion.
to vote. I guess is the place where we only
Right.
have a
Right.
disagreement. But if
yes, and
yeah.
my issue with that was it's not dishonoring the king not to vote was my clever little thing.
Yeah.
However, I think more so custom works a lot better for me.
Okay.
You know, honor may work for if honor works for whomever, go with honor. If honor doesn't click for you, default to custom. So, and we didn't get to, and that's fine. We can save it for another time. I want to. We'll end the episode with the hinting of another topic that I want to discuss. The strengths and weaknesses of viewing a mutable document as a magistrate.
Yeah. I mean, is it right for me to call the king
because
Constitution?
I don't disagree. Yeah. That's kind of as close as you can get with a magistrate in a republic. However, you know, my point being, when it was immediately written, it was then immediately amended. So
and we do have to do a Christian nationalist thing, because one of my problems with them is they think that they have the right to privately interpret the Constitution, and that trumps the judicial, executive, and legislative branch, which is, I think, crazy. Yeah. Right. So we, no, I do think the king is the Constitution in one sense, but you're right. I think some modern Christians, they use that as a way around Romans 13 and 1 Peter 2.
Right.
But we need, that's a whole,
it is.
And that's why this episode I tried to focus on the individual Christian being in politics.
Right.
And we could talk again, we didn't talk too much about it. There can be a danger of overdoing it.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, unplug from watching Fox News sometimes can be really healthy for you.
Yep. It can become an idol, and it can also become a total distraction.
Oh, absolutely. And you want to just, grab the sword and start slaying the infidel, and it's like,
right. And again, shall we call down fire from heaven?
Exactly. And again, I do want to definitely do an episode, the role of the church, the organized church, because I am strongly committed the church should be apolitical, and I'm amazed how few people think that.
Agreed.
But again, we're straying off to another subject. So
but anyway,
I'm done. Do you have any last words?
No. If
God save the king.
If you don't have an AR-15, sell your coat and buy one.
Okay. Well, with that, thank you for joining in, and we'll see you next time.
No, I got nothing. All right. It was a pleasure, and thank you all for joining us yet again, and we will see you next time.